It happened mid-laugh, which is why it took a second to register. My mom leaned across the table, close enough that it looked like affection, and whispered it with a smile she's used my whole life. "We don't sit with mistakes." The table reacted the way tables like that always do. A ripple of laughter, a couple of surprised sounds, someone clinking a fork against a plate. It moved fast, like a reflex no one wanted to own. My daughter didn't cry. She didn't look confused. She just looked down at her lap, shoulders folding in on themselves like she'd learned exactly how much space she was allowed to take. That was the moment. Not the joke. Not the laughter. The way she accepted it. I felt something familiar rise in me. An old instinct to soften, to reinterpret, to turn it into a misunderstanding before it hardened into conflict. I'd done that my whole childhood. Learned to translate humiliation into humor so no one had to feel uncomfortable. For a split second, I considered staying. Saying something light. Giving my daughter a wink that meant ignore it. This is just how they are. Then I remembered how long it took me to unlearn that lesson. So I didn't say anything. I reached for her hand. She looked up, startled, like she thought she'd done something wrong. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping louder than I expected. A couple of conversations around the table slowed, then stopped. "Already?" someone asked. I nodded once. Not at anyone in particular. We walked out to the car without a word. The air outside felt cooler, heavier. I buckled her in, noticing my hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd always imagined standing up to my parents would feel explosive. Instead it felt precise. On the drive home, she stared out the window. I didn't rush to explain. I didn't tell her everything was fine. I let the quiet do its work. Halfway there, she asked, "Did I do something bad?" "No," I said. Came out immediately, no hesitation. "You didn't." She nodded like she was filing that information away for later, not fully convinced yet. I knew better than to expect one sentence to undo years of exposure. That night, after she was asleep, my phone buzzed. "You're still covering the car payment tomorrow, right?" Dad, no mention of dinner. No curiosity about why we left. Just logistics. Obligation assumed like gravity. I stared at the message longer than I needed to. In my head, I could hear the old arguments lining up. They didn't mean it. "You're overreacting. Don't make this bigger than it is." But something had shifted. Not dramatically, quietly. The comment at the table hadn't just been about my daughter. It had revealed the terms of the relationship in plain language. I typed back. "Not for people who humiliate my kid." I set the phone down before I could reread it. The night passed without reply. That, too, felt familiar, silence as punishment, meant to make me squirm back into place. By morning, the calls started. Missed calls from my mom. Then my dad. Then my aunt, who hadn't spoken to me in months but suddenly felt invested. The messages followed. Confusion first, then irritation, then urgency. "What is going on? This is ridiculous. You can't just stop paying without notice." I didn't answer right away. I packed my daughter's lunch. I walked her to school. I kissed the top of her head and watched her run toward her friends, shoulders loose again. When I checked my phone at work, there were 12 missed calls. My mom finally left a voicemail. Her voice was tight, controlled until it wasn't. "We were joking. You embarrassed us. And now your father's car. This is not the time for some kind of statement. Fix this. Fix this." The same words she'd used my entire life whenever something cracked. As if my role was to absorb impact so everyone else could keep standing. I texted back once. "I'm not discussing whether it was a joke. I'm responding to what my child heard. The payment won't be made." That was the clearest authority I'd ever exercised with them. Not yelling. Not explaining. Just a boundary tied to a consequence. By noon, the tone changed. The calls multiplied. The messages softened. Words like family and misunderstanding and for her sake started appearing, as if my daughter's dignity was suddenly a shared priority now that money was involved. I didn't engage. I wasn't interested in a debate about intent. I'd lived too long inside those conversations, where harm got weighed against convenience and always lost. That evening, my dad texted again. Shorter this time. We need to talk. I replied, we can talk later. Right now, I'm focused on my kid. He didn't respond. Over the next few days, the practical fallout spread. Payments adjusted. Plans changed. I heard through someone else that my mom was telling people I'd taken things the wrong way, that I was being sensitive. I let her have that story. I wasn't interested in correcting the narrative anymore. What mattered showed up in smaller ways. My daughter stopped asking to see them. She didn't bring it up at all, actually. But one night, while I was brushing her hair, she said, very casually, I'm glad we left. Me too, I said. Are we in trouble? No, I said again. We're safe. She seemed satisfied with that. I don't know how this ends. There was no grand apology, no moment where everyone suddenly understood. Financial ties loosened. Emotional ones stretched thin and stayed there. Sometimes I wonder if I should have said more at the table, if I should have named it out loud. But then I remember her shoulders lifting again once we were gone. Leaving taught her something I was never taught, that humiliation doesn't get a pass just because it comes from family, and that walking away is not the same as losing. Some things don't get resolved. Some things just get interrupted. And sometimes that's enough.